Hello, my friend. Tonight, our peaceful journey through history takes us somewhere unlike anywhere we've visited before. We've stood inside the warmth of a medieval bakery, walked across muddy farm fields, and listened to the steady rhythm of the village blacksmith's hammer. But tonight, everything becomes quieter, far quieter. The busy marketplace slowly disappears behind us. The laughter of children fades into the distance. Even the sounds of horses and wagons grow softer until they are gone altogether. Ahead of us, standing proudly upon a gentle hillside, is a medieval monastery. Its thick stone walls have stood for generations. Its tall bell tower rises above the surrounding forests. Soft candlelight glows through narrow windows. The air feels cool, peaceful, almost timeless. Imagine, it is the year. Europe is a land of kings, castles, and endless countryside. Beyond the city walls, thousands of villages depend upon farmers, craftsmen, and merchants. Yet hidden quietly among forests, valleys, and rolling hills, another world exists. A world devoted not to wealth nor power, but to faith, discipline, and silence. You slowly approach the great wooden gate. Its heavy oak doors are reinforced with hand-forged iron. Centuries of wind and rain have darkened the wood. Above the entrance, a simple stone cross watches silently over everyone who enters. There are no guards, no soldiers, only quiet. The gate opens slowly. Its old iron hinges creak softly in the cool morning air. Inside, the monastery feels like a small village of its own. Stone pathways wind between simple buildings. A peaceful garden rests in the center. Rows of herbs grow carefully beside vegetables and fruit trees. A small fountain trickles gently nearby. The sound of flowing water mixes with birdsong. Everything feels calm, orderly, unhurried. At first glance, you might imagine this is an easy life. No battles, no dangerous roads, no roaring blacksmith's forge, no endless fields waiting to be harvested. Just peaceful buildings, beautiful gardens, and quiet prayer. But appearances can be wonderfully misleading. Life inside a medieval monastery demanded extraordinary discipline. Long before sunrise, the monastery bell would awaken every monk, not once, but many times throughout the day and night. Sleep was never uninterrupted. Comfort was never guaranteed. Every hour belonged to God. Every action followed carefully written rules. Every day looked remarkably similar to the one before. The men who lived here did not own fine clothing. They possessed no luxurious homes. Most owned almost nothing at all. A simple robe, a belt made of rope, a pair of worn sandals, if they were fortunate, perhaps a wooden bowl, a spoon, a prayer book. That was often enough. Personal wealth held little importance behind monastery walls. Instead, they pursued something entirely different: wisdom, patience, humility, and inner peace. The monastery itself is surprisingly busy, although silence is deeply respected. Work never truly ends. Some monks are already tending the gardens. Others quietly sweep stone walkways. A few prepare bread inside the kitchen. Several disappear into the library, where ancient books patiently wait beneath flickering candlelight. Everyone has a purpose. Everyone contributes. No task is considered too small. One monk carefully rings the morning bell. Another copies sacred manuscripts. Another cares for sick travelers. Another tends the bees that provide honey for the monastery. Each life is different, yet every life follows the same rhythm: prayer, work, study, rest, then beginning again. The scent of fresh herbs drifts gently through the courtyard: lavender, rosemary, sage, mint. Many monasteries became famous for growing medicinal plants. Long before modern hospitals, people often traveled great distances seeking healing from monks who understood the quiet secrets of nature. Nearby, a small group of novices quietly crosses the courtyard. These young men are still learning. Some have only recently entered the monastery. Others have already spent years studying under experienced monks. They walk with lowered eyes, speaking only when necessary, listening carefully, watching everything. Life here is not learned through books alone. It is learned through patience, routine, and quiet example. As you continue walking, you notice the extraordinary simplicity of every building. The walls are built from rough stone. The windows are small. The furniture is plain. Nothing has been created merely to impress. Everything serves a purpose. The dining hall, the dormitory, the chapel, the library, the workshop, the gardens. Every space reminds those who live here that simplicity can itself become a form of beauty. Above everything else stands the great church. Its tall stone arches disappear into shadow. Colored sunlight passes gently through stained glass windows. The air smells faintly of melted candle wax, old wood, and ancient books. Even footsteps seem quieter here, as if the building itself asks visitors to slow down, to breathe, to listen, to reflect. Perhaps this is why monasteries have fascinated historians for centuries. They preserved knowledge during uncertain times. They cared for the sick. They copied books by hand. They welcomed weary travelers. And they created places where silence itself became a teacher. Yet, despite all this peace, life inside these walls was far from easy. Every day demanded discipline that many of us would struggle to follow. There were strict schedules, long hours of prayer, hard physical work, simple meals, cold winters, and very few personal comforts. For someone from the modern world, accustomed to convenience, constant entertainment, and endless choices, the monastery would feel strangely unfamiliar, not because it lacked beauty, but because it offered something we rarely experience today: stillness, true stillness. As the first rays of sunlight finally reach the monastery gardens, the great bell rings once again. Its deep voice echoes across the valley. Birds rise gently into the morning sky. The monks quietly gather for the first prayer of the day. And your own peaceful journey through one of the quietest places in medieval Europe is only just beginning. The monastery is wrapped in darkness. Outside, the stars still shimmer above the quiet countryside. A thin blanket of mist settles over the gardens. The world feels perfectly still. No farmers are working in the fields. No merchants prepare their market stalls. Even the village dogs remain asleep. It is the deepest part of the night. Yet inside the monastery, the day is already about to begin. Without warning, a deep bell echoes through the silent halls. Its sound is slow, steady, and impossible to ignore. One single note, followed by another. The ancient bronze bell has performed this duty for generations. It wakes every monk, every single day. Not after sunrise, not when the weather becomes pleasant, but long before the first hint of morning appears. Imagine opening your eyes in complete darkness. There are no glowing alarm clocks, no electric lights, no warm bedroom waiting to comfort you. Only the faint flicker of a candle and the cold stone walls surrounding your small sleeping chamber. Your bed is simple: a wooden frame, a thin mattress stuffed with straw, a coarse wool blanket, perhaps a small pillow, if the monastery is fortunate enough to provide one. Luxury has no place here. The room itself contains almost nothing: a wooden stool, a small shelf, a simple cross hanging upon the wall. Everything unnecessary has been removed. Silence fills every corner. Slowly, The monk rises from his bed. The stone floor beneath his bare feet feels icy. Even during summer, the thick monastery walls remain cool. During winter, the cold becomes unforgettable. There is no central heating, no fireplace inside the sleeping quarters, only determination and habit. He quietly puts on his robe. The rough wool brushes against his skin. The rope belt is tied carefully around his waist. His sandals wait beside the bed. Simple, practical, unchanging. No one dresses to impress. No colorful fabrics, no expensive jewelry, no elegant shoes. Every monk wears nearly the same clothing. A reminder that pride has no place within these walls. Outside his chamber, the corridor is dimly lit by oil lamps. Soft footsteps echo gently against ancient stone. Other monks emerge silently from their rooms. Some are elderly, walking slowly with the help of wooden staffs. Others are young novices, still adjusting to this demanding life. No one speaks. Words are unnecessary. Everyone knows exactly where they must go. Together, they walk toward the monastery church. The only sounds are sandals brushing against worn stone, the distant call of an owl, and the quiet breathing of men beginning another day of devotion. As the heavy wooden doors open, the chapel welcomes them with peaceful darkness. Rows of candles flicker gently along the stone walls. Their warm light dances across carved pillars and stained glass windows, still hidden beneath the night. The air smells faintly of incense, beeswax, and old wood. Each monk quietly bows his head. Some kneel, others remain standing. The first prayers of the day are about to begin. These early prayers are known as matins. In many monasteries, they begin while the outside world still sleeps. For modern people, waking at such an hour might seem almost impossible. Yet medieval monks repeated this routine every day, every season, every year, without complaint, without weekends, without holidays. The voices of the monks rise softly through the chapel. They chant ancient Latin hymns. The melodies are slow, gentle, almost hypnotic. Their voices blend together into one peaceful sound. There are no musical instruments, no dramatic performances, only human voices filling the quiet church. The chants echo beautifully beneath the high stone ceiling. Even centuries later, many of these melodies are still sung today. After the prayers, there is no return to bed. The day has officially begun. Some monks remain in silent meditation. Others prepare candles. A few tidy the altar before sunrise. Everything is done carefully. Nothing is hurried. Time itself seems to move more slowly inside the monastery. As the first faint blue light appears beyond the eastern hills, the monastery slowly awakens. Birds begin their morning songs. The garden glistens with fresh dew. A cool breeze carries the scent of rosemary and lavender through the open courtyard. The bell rings once more. Another hour, another prayer, another quiet beginning. For many of us today, such a schedule would feel exhausting. We often struggle to wake after 8 hours of sleep. The medieval monk sometimes rose after only a few hours of rest. His day revolved not around comfort, but around discipline. Every morning reminded him that life was a gift, and every new day offered another opportunity to serve with humility. As the sun finally rises above the monastery walls, golden light spills across the peaceful courtyard. The shadows retreat. The gardens come alive. The monastery begins another ordinary day, a day remarkably similar to yesterday, and to countless days before it. Perhaps that quiet consistency was one of its greatest strengths. In a world filled with uncertainty, the monks always knew what tomorrow would bring. Another bell, another prayer, another sunrise. The first light of morning now fills the monastery courtyard. Golden sunlight gently touches the old stone walls. Small birds hop across the garden paths, searching for seeds among the herbs. A cool breeze carries the scent of lavender, sage, and damp earth. The world outside is beginning another busy day. Farmers are already walking toward their fields. Blacksmiths are lighting their forges. Bakers are pulling fresh loaves from hot ovens. But inside the monastery, life follows a very different rhythm. There is no rush, no shouting, no crowded marketplace. Only quiet footsteps, soft prayers, and long moments of peaceful silence. To many visitors, the silence feels almost mysterious. At first, it may even seem uncomfortable. We are used to constant sound, the gentle buzz of machines, the voices of strangers, music playing in the background, the endless stream of conversations filling every moment of our day. For a medieval monk, silence was something entirely different. It was not empty. It was meaningful. Silence allowed the mind to settle. It created space for reflection, for gratitude, for prayer. Many monasteries followed a set of instructions known as the Rule of Saint Benedict. Written nearly 800 years before our journey, these simple but powerful guidelines shaped daily life for thousands of monks across Europe. The rule was not designed to make life easy. Instead, it taught balance. Prayer, work, study, rest. Everything had its proper time. One of its most famous teachings was remarkably simple. Listen with the ear of your heart, not merely with your ears, but with your whole attention. Perhaps this explains why silence became so valuable. When no one is speaking, even the smallest sounds become noticeable. The rustling of leaves, the gentle crackle of candle flames, the distant ringing of church bells, the quiet footsteps of another monk walking across worn stone floors. Each sound becomes part of the day's peaceful rhythm. The monks gathered for prayer many times each day, not once, not twice, but again and again. The hours were carefully divided. Matins before dawn, lauds at sunrise, prime in the early morning, terce, sext, none, vespers, and finally, compline before sleep. Each service reminded the monks to pause, no matter what task they were doing. A monk working in the garden would quietly set down his tools. A scribe copying a manuscript would carefully place his feather quill aside. A cook preparing bread would leave the kitchen for a short time. The bell always came first. It gently interrupted every activity, not as a burden, but as a reminder. Life was measured not by business, but by devotion. Of course, maintaining silence was not always easy. Imagine living with dozens of other people, sharing meals, sleeping in nearby rooms, working together every day. Naturally, there would be moments when conversation felt tempting. Yet many monasteries encouraged monks to speak only when necessary, not because words were considered bad, but because unnecessary words could easily become gossip, complaints, arguments, or distractions. Instead, the monks developed simple hand signals for everyday tasks. A gesture might request bread. Another could ask for water. One movement of the hand could replace an entire sentence. Meals were especially quiet. The monks entered the dining hall in orderly rows. Each found his place at the long wooden tables. Bowls of vegetable stew, fresh bread, and perhaps cheese or beans were served without conversation. While everyone ate, one monk stood at a wooden lectern. He read aloud from the Bible, or from the writings of respected teachers. The others listened silently. Every meal became another opportunity to learn, to reflect, to nourish both body and mind. There were moments, however, when laughter still found its way into monastery life. A novice might accidentally spill a bucket of water. A cat could wander into the kitchen chasing mice. The monastery dog might quietly follow the monks into the garden. Even in places devoted to discipline, small moments of joy remained wonderfully human. As the morning continues, the monastery feels almost timeless. The chapel fills with soft chants. The library welcomes quiet readers. The gardens bloom peacefully beneath the warming sun. Everywhere, people move with calm purpose. No one hurries, no one competes. The pace of life is steady, deliberate, almost gentle. For many people today, this might sound surprisingly appealing. A life free from endless notifications, free from crowded schedules, free from constant noise. Yet there is another side to this peaceful existence. Imagine repeating the same routine every day, the same prayers, the same meals, the same work, the same stone walls. For years, perhaps for the rest of your life, many of us would struggle, not because the work is difficult, but because the routine never changes. The monks accepted this repetition with remarkable patience. They believed that ordinary tasks, performed with care, could become something extraordinary. Sweeping a floor, lighting a candle, tending a garden, copying a page. Each small action, done with attention, became an act of devotion. Perhaps that is one of the monastery's greatest lessons, that a meaningful life is not always built from exciting moments. Sometimes it is quietly created through thousands of simple actions, repeated faithfully, day after day. As the monastery bell rings once again, the monks gently rise from their work. Another hour has passed. Another prayer awaits. The rhythm continues. Calm, steady, unchanging, like the slow turning of the seasons themselves. The morning has quietly passed. Golden sunlight now reaches through the tall windows of the monastery. Outside, the gardens are alive with bees drifting gently from flower to flower. A light breeze carries the scent of rosemary, mint, and freshly turned soil. The world feels peaceful. Yet beyond a heavy oak door, another kind of work is about to begin. One that requires neither great strength nor powerful muscles. Instead, it demands patience, extraordinary patience. Welcome to the scriptorium. This quiet room is unlike any other place inside the monastery. Long wooden desks stand neatly beneath tall windows. Shelves filled with precious manuscripts line the stone walls. Candles flicker softly despite the daylight, their warm glow dancing across pages of smooth parchment. The air smells of beeswax, oak wood, fresh ink, and old leather bindings. Every sound is gentle, the scratch of a feather quill, the turning of a page. The quiet breathing of monks completely absorbed in their work. For centuries, this room became one of Europe's greatest treasures. Because before printing presses, every single book had to be copied, by hand. Imagine that for a moment. Every Bible, every history book, every scientific text, every poem, every prayer book, written one letter at a time. The monk quietly takes his place at a simple wooden desk. His tools are surprisingly few: a feather quill, a small knife, several pots of ink, a ruler, a smooth piece of parchment, and beside him, an older manuscript waiting to be copied. His task appears simple: copy exactly what he sees. No mistakes, no missing words, no forgotten letters. One small error could completely change the meaning of an important passage. So he begins. Slowly, he dips the quill into dark ink, carefully removing any excess against the edge of the ink pot. Then, the feather gently touches the parchment. The first letter appears, elegant, steady, perfectly formed. Line after line, the manuscript slowly grows. Hour after hour, The monk writes with remarkable concentration. His hand rarely shakes. His breathing remains calm. Every movement has become familiar after years of practice. Sometimes, he pauses only to sharpen the tip of his feather. The small knife beside his desk serves many purposes. It trims damaged quills, scrapes away tiny mistakes, and carefully smooths rough edges of parchment. Nothing is wasted. Every tool is cared for with great attention. The parchment itself is precious. Unlike modern paper, it is made from carefully prepared animal skin. Creating a single sheet requires considerable time and effort. Mistakes become expensive. That is why every stroke of ink matters. The black ink comes from natural ingredients. Oak galls collected from ancient trees, mixed with iron salts, combined with gum from plants. The recipe has been refined over generations. It produces ink that will survive for centuries. Some manuscripts copied during the Middle Ages can still be read today. Their letters remain surprisingly dark, despite the passing of hundreds of years. Not every page contains only words. Some become works of art. These decorated manuscripts are known as illuminated manuscripts. The name comes from the brilliant gold leaf that seems to glow beneath candlelight. A monk carefully paints large decorative letters. Tiny flowers, birds, vines, dragons, saints, kings. Every illustration is created with astonishing patience. Some pages require days to complete. Others, weeks. The smallest brushstrokes are almost invisible unless viewed closely. Natural pigments create brilliant colors. Blue from precious lapis lazuli, red from minerals and plants, green from copper compounds, gold leaf so thin it almost floats in the air before settling upon the page. Each manuscript becomes unique, not simply a book, but a masterpiece. Silence fills the scriptorium. Conversation is rare. Only the quiet scratching of dozens of feather quills can be heard. Together, they create a gentle rhythm, soft enough to calm the mind, steady enough to make time itself seem slower. Occasionally, a ray of sunlight passes through stained glass windows. Colored light drifts across unfinished pages. For a brief moment, red, blue, and golden patterns dance across the parchment. Then, the light moves on. Hours pass almost unnoticed. Outside, the monastery bell rings once again. Some monks quietly leave for prayer. Others remain behind, carefully placing cloth over unfinished pages to protect them from dust. The work will continue after the service. Books are simply too important to rush. Many of the ancient writings we know today survived only because monks patiently copied them. Works written by Roman philosophers, Greek scientists, early Christian scholars, even stories from long-forgotten kingdoms. Without these quiet scribes, much of Europe's knowledge might have disappeared forever. The monk understands this responsibility. He may never become famous. No one will celebrate his name. Future readers may never know who copied these pages, yet his work matters, perhaps more than he will ever realize. As afternoon sunlight grows warmer, the final lines of today's page are completed. The monk carefully blows across the fresh ink, waiting patiently for it to dry. Then, he closes the manuscript, places the feather beside the ink pot, and quietly whispers a short prayer of gratitude. Another page has been preserved. Another small piece of history has survived. As he gently extinguishes the nearest candle, the scriptorium grows peaceful once again. Rows of completed manuscripts rest safely upon their shelves, waiting quietly, perhaps, for someone, hundreds of years in the future, to open them once again. The afternoon sun hangs quietly above the monastery. Its warm light spills gently across the stone walls, casting long shadows over peaceful gardens. The morning's prayers have ended. The manuscripts rest safely inside the scriptorium. Now, the monks leave the cool buildings behind and step into the open air. Unlike many people imagine, a medieval monastery was not only a place of prayer, it was also a place of work. Every monastery needed to feed itself. Sometimes, it also fed travelers, pilgrims, the poor, and the sick. That meant growing food every single day. You follow a narrow stone path leading into the monastery gardens. The air immediately changes. The scent of old parchment and candle wax is replaced by something fresher. Lavender, rosemary, mint. Fresh soil. The gentle fragrance of apple trees carried by the afternoon breeze. The gardens are carefully organized. Nothing grows by accident. Every bed of vegetables, every fruit tree, every flowering herb has its own purpose. Centuries before modern supermarkets, this garden was the monastery's pantry, its pharmacy, and sometimes its classroom. Several monks quietly work among the rows. One gently removes weeds from around young cabbages. Another gathers onions into woven baskets. Nearby, an elderly monk kneels beside a patch of medicinal herbs. His hands move slowly, carefully selecting only the healthiest leaves. He has done this for decades. Knowledge of plants is passed quietly from one generation to the next. There are no printed manuals, only experience, observation, and patience. The monastery grows many familiar vegetables: carrots, leeks, cabbages, turnips, beans, peas. Each crop appears in its proper season. Nothing is rushed. The monks understand the rhythm of nature, just as farmers do beyond the monastery walls. Nearby, rows of fragrant herbs stretch toward the afternoon sun. Sage, thyme, chamomile, fennel, parsley. Each plant serves more than one purpose. Some flavor simple meals. Others become medicines. A warm tea brewed from chamomile may help calm an anxious traveler. Mint eases an unsettled stomach. Sage soothes a sore throat. Long before pharmacies, the monastery garden provided many of the remedies people depended upon. Visitors often arrived seeking help. A farmer suffering from fever, a traveler with an injured foot, a child troubled by persistent coughs. The monks welcomed them quietly, preparing herbal mixtures, simple ointments, or warm infusions gathered from the very garden before them. Not every remedy worked perfectly. Modern medicine has taught us much. Yet surprisingly, many of these herbs are still used today. Centuries of careful observation had revealed their gentle benefits. Toward the edge of the garden, small wooden boxes hum softly beneath the afternoon sun. Bees. Dozens, perhaps hundreds of them. The monastery keeps several hives. The bees move calmly from flower to flower, collecting nectar. Their work never seems hurried, only steady. Purposeful. The monks value them greatly. Honey is precious. It sweetens food, preserves fruit, helps prepare medicines, and beeswax provides clean-burning candles for long evenings of prayer. Every part of nature has its place. Nearby, fruit trees stand quietly in neat rows. Apple, pear, plum, cherry. During autumn, their branches grow heavy with fruit. Some is eaten fresh, some dried for winter, some carefully stored inside cool stone cellars. Nothing is wasted. The monastery must prepare for every season. A few monks work beside a small vineyard. Although vineyards are more common in warmer regions, many monasteries cultivate grapes whenever the climate allows. The grapes become juice, sometimes wine, used during religious ceremonies and daily meals. Growing vines requires remarkable patience. Years may pass before the first truly satisfying harvest. But monks understand patience perhaps better than anyone. Beyond the gardens, larger fields stretch toward the surrounding hills. Barley, wheat, oats. These grains provide the monastery's most important food, bread. Every morning, the monastery baker prepares simple loaves using flour ground in a nearby mill. The smell of fresh bread drifts gently through the courtyard. Warm, comforting, familiar. It reminds every monk that even the simplest meal is something to be thankful for. The monastery kitchen itself is modest. Large iron pots hang above glowing fires. Wooden tables hold fresh vegetables gathered only moments earlier. Soup slowly simmers. Bread cools upon woven cloth. Cheese rests quietly in the pantry. Meals remain simple. There are no extravagant feasts, no endless choices. Only nourishing food prepared with care. Most days, the monks eat in silence. One monk reads from scripture while the others quietly listen. Even eating becomes an opportunity for reflection. Outside, the afternoon breeze gently stirs the leaves of the herb garden. Butterflies drift lazily from flower to flower. The distant bell rings once again. Its familiar voice reminds everyone that another hour has quietly passed. The monks pause their work. Some wipe soil from their hands. Others carefully place baskets beneath shaded trees. Work can wait. Prayer calls once more. Perhaps that is one of the monastery's greatest lessons. Neither work nor prayer stands above the other. Both belong together. Growing vegetables becomes an act of gratitude. Preparing bread becomes an act of service. Even watering herbs beneath the summer sun becomes another quiet form of devotion. As the monks slowly leave the gardens, the afternoon sunlight grows softer. Long shadows stretch across the stone pathways. The bees continue their gentle work. The herbs sway peacefully in the breeze. The vegetables remain rooted in rich earth, waiting patiently for tomorrow. And the monastery, once again, returns to silence. The afternoon is slowly giving way to evening. Golden sunlight slips quietly across the monastery courtyard. Long shadows stretch beneath the ancient stone arches. The gardens become still. Only the gentle buzzing of bees and the distant singing of birds break the silence. Most visitors imagine medieval monasteries as places devoted only to prayer, peaceful, quiet, almost isolated from the rest of the world. And while that is partly true, there is another side to monastery life, one hidden behind thick stone walls and heavy oak doors, a world filled with curiosity, learning, and the careful preservation of knowledge. As you walk through a narrow corridor, you arrive at one of the monastery's greatest treasures, the library. Its shelves are lined with carefully bound manuscripts. Some are wrapped in leather. Others rest inside wooden chests for protection. Each book represents hundreds of hours, sometimes thousands, of patient work. Unlike today, books are incredibly rare. Most ordinary people will never own one. Many will never even hold one in their hands. To possess a library like this is to possess a priceless collection of human knowledge. A monk quietly removes one manuscript from the shelf. The leather cover creaks softly as it opens. Inside, beautiful Latin letters fill every page. Tiny illustrations decorate the margins. Gold leaf catches the fading afternoon light. The pages have survived decades. Some have survived centuries. Without monasteries, many of these books might have disappeared forever. Among these shelves are writings from ancient Rome, philosophy from Greece, religious texts, medical observations, poetry, mathematics, astronomy, even practical guides to farming, architecture, and music. The monks did not preserve knowledge for fame. They believed learning itself was another way of honoring God's creation. Knowledge, like a candle, was something to be protected and passed from one generation to the next, one room beyond the library. A group of younger monks quietly studies beneath candlelight. An elderly teacher stands beside a wooden table. He points gently toward a hand-drawn map of the stars. The night sky fascinated medieval scholars. Without telescopes, they carefully observed the movement of planets, the changing phases of the moon, and the steady rhythm of the seasons. These observations help determine important religious festivals, planting seasons, and even the safest times for long journeys. As darkness slowly falls, the monastery often becomes the perfect place to study the heavens. Far from crowded cities, the sky appears brilliantly clear. Thousands of stars shimmer overhead. The Milky Way stretches across the night like a river of light. Some monks spend countless evenings simply watching, recording, wondering, seeking to better understand the remarkable universe surrounding them. Not far away, another monk carefully mixes dried herbs inside a small stone bowl. The monastery also serves as a place of healing. Simple medicines are prepared using plants grown in the monastery gardens. Honey, mint, sage, lavender, chamomile. Each ingredient is selected with care. The knowledge behind these remedies has been gathered through generations of careful observation. Sometimes travelers arrive suffering from fever. Sometimes pilgrims carry infected wounds from long journeys. The monks offer what help they can. They clean injuries, prepare herbal mixtures, provide warm meals, and perhaps most importantly, offer a safe place to rest. Although medieval medicine was far from perfect, many monasteries became respected centers of care during uncertain times. Music also fills monastery life, though in a remarkably peaceful way. There are no loud celebrations, no dramatic performances, only voices. Soft, steady, and beautifully united. Gregorian chant echoes gently beneath stone ceilings. Each note rises slowly into the cool evening air. The melodies contain no rushing rhythm, no complicated harmonies, only calm, flowing lines of music. Even today, people around the world listen to these ancient chants for relaxation and meditation. Perhaps the monks understood something timeless. That gentle music can quiet even the busiest mind. As evening deepens, the monastery library grows still once more. Candles flicker beside unfinished manuscripts. A young novice carefully returns a precious volume to its shelf. He pauses for a moment, running his fingers gently across the worn leather binding. Perhaps he wonders, who copied these pages? Who first held this book? How many generations have protected it before him? History is often remembered through kings, battles, and great monuments. Yet countless ordinary monks quietly preserve the stories that allow us to know those histories at all. Without their patient work, the entire chapters of human civilization might simply have vanished. As the final light fades beyond the monastery walls, the bell rings once again. Its familiar voice echoes softly across the valley. The monks quietly close their books, extinguish several candles, and prepare for the evening prayers. The library returns to silence, its shelves standing patiently in the darkness, guarding centuries of wisdom, waiting for another peaceful morning. The evening has quietly settled over the monastery. The last golden rays of sunlight disappear behind the distant hills. The gardens grow still. Birdsong slowly fades into silence. One by one, candles begin to illuminate the stone corridors. Their gentle light flickers against walls that have witnessed centuries of quiet devotion. At this hour, the monastery feels even more mysterious. Its routines, so familiar to the monks, appear surprisingly unusual to us. Many of the traditions practiced within these walls would seem almost impossible for modern people to follow. Yet for medieval monks, they became a normal part of everyday life. Perhaps the most recognizable tradition was the monk's hairstyle. Known as the tonsure, the top of the head was carefully shaved, leaving only a ring of hair around the sides. Today, it might seem like a simple haircut, But during the Middle Ages, it carried deep symbolic meaning. The tonsure reminded every monk that he had left his former life behind, no longer defined by wealth, family, or social status. He now belonged entirely to the monastery. It was a quiet symbol of humility, a visible reminder that pride should never become more important than faith. Another remarkable tradition was the vow of poverty. Imagine owning almost nothing. No personal collection of books, no expensive clothing, no jewelry, no money kept for yourself. Everything belonged to the community. Even the robe a monk wore was considered the property of the monastery. If a monk needed a new pair of sandals, he simply asked. If he required another blanket during winter, it was provided according to necessity, not personal preference. For many people today, this way of living would feel unimaginable. Our modern lives often revolve around collecting things: a larger home, newer technology, more possessions. The monks chose a very different path. They believed freedom could sometimes be found not by gaining more, but by needing less. Another important promise was the vow of obedience. Every monastery had an abbot, the spiritual leader of the community. His responsibility was not simply to give orders, but to guide the monastery with wisdom and fairness. The monks trusted his decisions, even when the work assigned was difficult or unexpected. Perhaps today, the abbot asked one monk to spend hours copying manuscripts. Tomorrow, that same monk might work in the vegetable gardens or repair a roof damaged by winter storms. No task was considered beneath anyone. Service itself was considered an act of devotion. Silence remained another powerful tradition. Although conversation was permitted at certain times, many hours passed with very few spoken words. Some monasteries even observed periods of complete silence after evening prayers. Imagine an entire building, filled with dozens of people, yet almost no voices, only footsteps, the crackling of candles, the turning of ancient pages, and the distant ringing of the monastery bell. At first, such silence might feel uncomfortable, but after many months, perhaps even peaceful, the monks believed silence allowed them to hear thoughts that constant conversation often buried. Meals followed their own traditions as well. Everyone entered the dining hall quietly. No one rushed toward the tables. Each monk waited patiently until everyone had gathered. Simple food was served: bread, vegetable soup, cheese, perhaps fish on certain days. Meat was often reserved for the sick or special occasions. While everyone ate, one monk stood at a wooden lectern. Instead of conversation, he read aloud from scripture or from the writings of respected scholars. The others listened attentively. Even supper became another lesson, another opportunity to learn. Fasting also played an important role throughout the year. On certain days, meals became smaller. Sometimes only one simple meal was eaten. These periods of fasting reminded the monks to practice self-control and gratitude. Although difficult, they believed temporary discomfort strengthened both body and spirit. Life inside the monastery was also measured by the seasons. Spring brought planting. Summer required long hours tending gardens. Autumn filled the storerooms with grain and fruit. Winter slowed the pace, but never the prayers. No matter the weather, the bell continued to ring. The daily routine remained remarkably constant. Perhaps that consistency offered comfort during uncertain times. Outside the monastery walls, wars could begin. Kings could rise and fall. Harvests might succeed or fail. But inside, the familiar rhythm endured. Prayer, work, study, rest. Then, beginning once more. One tradition surprises many historians: hospitality. Despite their quiet lives, monasteries often welcomed strangers, pilgrims, travelers, the poor, sometimes even nobles seeking shelter. Guests were offered food, a warm bed, and kindness, not because they could repay the monks, but because offering hospitality was considered a sacred duty. For weary travelers, a monastery often became the safest place to spend the night. As darkness settles completely across the countryside, the final bell of the day echoes through the valley. The monks slowly make their way toward the chapel. Candles glow softly inside the ancient church. Evening prayers begin. Their calm voices rise together once more. Steady, gentle, peaceful. The chants drift upward beneath the high stone ceiling, then slowly fade into silence. One by one, the candles are extinguished. The corridors grow darker. The gardens rest beneath the moonlight. The monastery prepares for another quiet night. Tomorrow, long before the first rays of dawn, the bell will ring again. The routine will begin once more. Unchanged, familiar, steady. For the monks, this rhythm was not a burden. It was the very foundation of their lives. The monastery has fallen silent once again. The final candle burns gently beside the altar. Outside, the moon hangs peacefully above the ancient stone walls. A cool breeze moves softly through the herb gardens. The bees have returned to their hives. The birds have settled among the trees. Only the distant sound of an owl reminds us that the world beyond the monastery is still awake. Inside, the monks prepare for sleep. They walk quietly through dimly lit corridors. Their footsteps echo gently across worn stone floors polished by centuries of patient devotion. No hurried conversations fill the air. No laughter breaks the silence. Each monk returns to his small room. Simple, plain, peaceful. There are no luxurious beds, no soft mattresses, no colorful decorations. Only a wooden bed, a straw mattress, a wool blanket, a small wooden stool, and perhaps a single candle. Everything unnecessary has been left behind. The monastery teaches a simple lesson. True peace does not always require many possessions. As we look back on everything we have experienced today, one question quietly remains. Would you really survive 1 week as a medieval monk? At first, the answer might seem obvious. Many people imagine monastery life as peaceful. No crowded cities, no dangerous battles, no endless farming beneath the hot summer sun. No roaring blacksmith's forge. Instead, beautiful gardens, ancient libraries, quiet prayer, simple meals. It sounds almost relaxing, and in many ways, it truly was. But peace does not always mean comfort. Every day began long before sunrise. The monastery bell interrupted sleep, while the world outside remained wrapped in darkness. Cold stone floors greeted tired feet. Long hours of prayer shaped every part of the day. Silence demanded patience. Routine demanded discipline. There were few personal choices. Every hour followed the same familiar rhythm, the same prayers, the same work, the same meals, the same quiet corridors. For a few days, such a routine might feel refreshing. After a week, many of us would begin searching for conversation, for variety, for distraction. Our modern lives are filled with constant movement. Messages arrive every few minutes. Music follows us almost everywhere. Screens glow late into the night. Silence has become surprisingly rare. Yet inside a medieval monastery, silence was not something to escape. It was something to embrace. The monks believed quiet moments allowed the heart to become still. They believed wisdom often appeared, not in noise, but in silence. Perhaps there is something we can still learn from that today. The monastery also reminds us that meaningful work is not always exciting. Copying one page of a manuscript, watering a small garden, preparing bread for strangers, lighting candles before prayer. These tasks may seem ordinary, yet repeated with care, they quietly shaped history. Without the patient work of medieval monks, countless ancient books might have disappeared forever. The writings of Greek philosophers, Roman historians, early scientists, poets, theologians, much of that knowledge survived because someone, centuries ago, sat patiently beside a candle, carefully copying every word by hand. Their names have mostly been forgotten, but their work continues to speak. The monastery also teaches us something about time. Modern life often encourages speed, faster travel, faster communication, faster meals, faster entertainment. The monks lived differently. They accepted that some things simply required patience. A tree needed years to bear fruit. A manuscript required months to complete. Wisdom developed slowly. Faith deepened quietly. Nothing truly important could be rushed. Perhaps that gentle rhythm explains why monasteries often feel so peaceful, even today. Their walls have witnessed generations of ordinary days, days that looked remarkably alike. Yet together, those ordinary days created something extraordinary. As the night grows deeper, the monastery becomes completely still. The chapel rests in darkness. The library sleeps behind heavy wooden doors. The gardens shimmer beneath soft moonlight. A gentle breeze carries the scent of lavender across the quiet courtyard. Tomorrow, long before dawn, the bell will ring again. The monks will rise. The candles will be lit. Prayers will begin. The gardens will be tended. Books will be copied. Bread will be baked. The rhythm will continue, just as it has for centuries. History often celebrates kings, queens, victorious generals, and famous battles. Yet hidden behind monastery walls, ordinary men quietly preserved knowledge, offered shelter to strangers, cared for the sick, and devoted their lives to something greater than themselves. They rarely sought recognition. They simply continued their work, day after day, year after year. Perhaps that quiet dedication is their greatest legacy. As our own journey comes to an end, take one last look across the peaceful monastery courtyard. The stone buildings glow softly beneath the moon. The fountain whispers gently into the night. The final candle fades. The bell tower stands silently against the stars. Everything is calm. Everything is still. Thank you for joining me on this peaceful journey through the hidden world of medieval monks. If you enjoyed exploring the quiet side of history, there are many more stories waiting for us. The life of a medieval castle servant, the routines of a Roman legionary, the daily world of Viking families, the hidden streets of ancient Egypt, and countless forgotten lives that shaped our world in ways we rarely imagine. But for now, our journey has reached its peaceful conclusion. The candles have burned low. The monastery sleeps. The stars watch quietly overhead. So close your eyes. Take one final slow breath and allow the gentle echoes of history to fade softly into the night. Good night.